Most people see the girl in the spotlight. They see the viral performances, the record-breaking streaming numbers, the global magazine covers, the sold-out stadium tours, the brand campaigns that move product in markets from Seoul to Sao Paulo. What they don't see is the spreadsheet. Somewhere right now, the woman who has generated over 1 billion streams as a solo artist is sitting in a boardroom. Not as a client, not as a guest, not as the talent being briefed on the deal, as the boss, as the accountant, as the architect of something that has taken the music industry completely off guard. She holds 3 titles at her own company simultaneously: CEO, CFO, director. Most artists her age are still negotiating royalty rates they don't fully understand. She is the one writing the contracts. And here is the detail that is making record executives in Los Angeles, London, and Seoul very uncomfortable. She is only just getting started. By the time this video ends, you are going to understand 3 things that most of Lisa's 100 million Instagram followers have never stopped to consider. Why she walked away from the most powerful K-pop label in the world at the absolute peak of her fame. What LLOUD actually is beneath the surface, and why it is structured the way it is. And why the moves she is making right now could permanently rewrite the rules for every Asian artist who comes after her. This is the LLOUD Empire, and this is how it was built. Part 1. The rise before the empire. Let's start at the beginning, because to understand where Lisa is going, you need to understand exactly where she came from, and how brutal that road actually was. Born Lalisa Manobal in Buriram, Thailand in 1997, Lisa was not handed a golden ticket. She auditioned for YG Entertainment as a 13-year-old child who had traveled alone from Thailand to South Korea, a country whose language she did not speak, to compete against thousands of other hopefuls for a handful of trainee slots. YG received approximately 4,000 applicants that year. They took one from Thailand. That one was her. The years that followed were defined by the machinery of the Korean entertainment training system. Hours of dance rehearsal, 7 days a week, intensive language study, image coaching, the methodical, often grueling construction of what the industry calls an idol, a performer engineered to function at the highest level across every discipline simultaneously. It is a factory process, and when it works completely. In 2016, BLACKPINK debuted. The impact was immediate. Within 2 years, they were the most subscribed female group on YouTube in history. Lisa was the main dancer and lead rapper, the member who made choreographers nervous because she executed routines so precisely there was simply nothing left to critique. Critics ran out of superlatives. Audiences ran out of words. But here is what nobody told you about those early BLACKPINK years. Lisa was, by multiple commercial measurements, the most globally recognized individual member of the group. Her solo Instagram following dwarfed industry norms for group members. Her individual streaming numbers regularly outperformed most solo artists' full catalogs. She was, in raw global reach terms, one of the most commercially valuable entertainers on the planet. And yet she was bound, like every BLACKPINK member, by a contract structure that gave YG Entertainment sweeping control over her image, her release schedule, her commercial partnerships, and her earnings potential. The label owned the machine. The artist powered it. In 2021, she went solo. The debut single, Lalisa, broke YouTube's record for the biggest opening day by a solo female artist, 73 million views in 24 hours. The follow-up, Money, did something even more culturally significant. It transcended the K-pop lane entirely. It appeared in NFL game broadcasts. It became a recurring soundtrack at international fashion weeks. It went viral on TikTok in waves that kept refreshing for over a year. A song about financial empowerment made by an artist who had not yet fully taken financial ownership of her own career. The irony was not lost on her. Then came Crazy Horse Paris. In the autumn of 2023, Lisa performed a residency at the legendary and deliberately provocative Crazy Horse Cabaret in Paris. The response was immediate and deeply divided. Segments of her fan base in Asia expressed concern. Western press called it empowering, avant-garde, a statement. Korean internet forums ran at a temperature that could have melted the servers. The debate consumed entertainment media for weeks. But here is what the vast majority of commentators missed entirely. Lisa did not stumble into the Crazy Horse stage. That performance was a strategic declaration, a public signal, delivered in one of the most famous venues in the world, that she, and not YG Entertainment, and not fan consensus, and not cultural expectation, would define what her image looked like going forward. It was a controlled explosion. and it cleared the runway for everything that followed. Shortly after, her contract with YG Entertainment expired. She did not renew. In an industry where leaving a top-tier label is considered career-threatening for most artists, where the label's infrastructure is treated as a lifeline no artist can afford to cut, Lisa went quiet. The silence lasted months. No new label announcement, no collaboration tease, no carefully managed leak to a fan site, just silence. The strategy was deliberate. In the music business, silence creates anticipation. Absence manufactures demand. Every week without an announcement made the announcement, when it finally came, more significant. And when it came, it was not the name of a new label she had signed with. It was the name of her own. Part 2. What is LLOUD? LLOUD. 2 L's. 1 word. An empire in formation. The name itself is a statement with 2 layers. The double L is a direct, deliberate reference to the 2 L's in Lalisa, her full given name, the name she carried from Thailand to Seoul and eventually to every major market on Earth. But LLOUD also means exactly what it sounds like phonetically. Loud. Unapologetic. Structurally impossible to ignore. It is a name that announces its own ambition in a single syllable. In the world of entertainment branding, that kind of compressed clarity is extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily intentional. Naming a company, though, is the easy part. What makes LLOUD genuinely extraordinary, and what has the music industry's legal and financial community paying very close attention, is its structure. Lisa holds 3 titles at LLOUD simultaneously. Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Director. Let's break down what that actually means in practice, because this is precisely the part that most entertainment news coverage has glossed over, and the part that matters most. As CEO, Lisa controls LLOUD's overall vision and strategic direction. She decides what the company stands for, what deals it takes, what opportunities it declines, and where it expands next. In most artist-owned companies, and there have been many attempts, the artist holds the CEO title nominally, while a management team runs the actual business day-to-day. The artist approves decisions. The executives make them. At LLOUD, sources close to the company have indicated that Lisa is operationally engaged, present in meetings, active in negotiations, and directly involved in the decisions that define the company's direction. This is not a vanity title positioned for the press release. This is a functional role. As CFO, she holds direct oversight of LLOUD's financial architecture. Revenue streams, cost structure, investment allocation, profit distribution, all of it flows through her financial authority. For an artist to hold the chief financial officer position at their own company is rare to the point of being nearly unprecedented in the global entertainment industry. Most artists, even enormously successful ones, navigate their financial lives through accountants and managers whose incentives do not always align perfectly with their own. They discover royalty irregularities in audits, not in real time. They learn what their catalog is worth when someone offers to buy it, not from reading their own quarterly statements. Lisa is reading the statements herself. She is signing off on the balance sheet. As director, she holds the top position in LLOUD's governance structure, the ultimate legal and strategic authority over the company's direction and decisions. Together, the 3 titles represent what the industry calls full-stack ownership, creative control, financial sovereignty, and structural authority residing in one person simultaneously. Now consider the closest comparisons. Rihanna built Fenty Beauty with LVMH, one of the most successful celebrity business partnerships in history. But it is a partnership. LVMH provided the infrastructure, the manufacturing relationships, the distribution network, and a significant portion of the capital. The company is transformative and extraordinarily lucrative. It is also, structurally, a joint venture with a French luxury conglomerate that controls its own substantial share of the table. Jay-Z launched Tidal as a collectively artist-owned streaming platform, a bold concept that was eventually acquired by Square. The artist ownership model was distributed across multiple celebrity stakeholders from the beginning, and the exit was on terms set by an outside buyer. Taylor Swift, the most discussed example of artist financial empowerment in recent memory, has spent the last 5 years re-recording her own master recordings to reclaim ownership over music she made under another label's terms. It is an act of brilliance, defiance, and enormous commercial discipline. But at its core, it remains a defensive move, reclaiming what was taken. Lisa is not reclaiming anything. She is building from scratch, with full control embedded from day one. And then there is the dimension that the Western music press has been remarkably reluctant to name directly who Lisa is. She is a Southeast Asian woman, Thai-born. The daughter of a country that has produced extraordinary artistic talent for generations, but that has historically occupied a peripheral position in Western entertainment's power structure. The music industry, its major labels, its publishing houses, its management empires, its streaming platforms, has been built largely by and for Western capital, operating primarily in Western cultural frameworks. For a Thai woman in her mid-20s to hold the CEO, CFO, and director titles of an independent entertainment company with genuine, demonstrable global reach is not simply a personal achievement. It is a structural disruption. It breaks a pattern that the industry has maintained, sometimes consciously and sometimes simply through inertia, for decades. The executives in Los Angeles and London who are watching LLOUD are not watching purely out of admiration. Some of them are watching because they recognize the shape of what is forming, and they know what that shape tends to produce when it reaches full scale. We will get there. Part 3. The Empire in Action. Understanding the titles is one thing. Understanding how LLOUD actually functions as a living operational business is something else entirely. Here is a fact that separates genuinely successful artist-owned companies from the hundreds that have failed quietly after the announcement press cycle. Having the idea is not enough. You need infrastructure. You need a revenue model that does not collapse the moment a single release stops trending. You need a team whose expertise exceeds the artist's own. And you need the discipline to build the machine while simultaneously operating at the highest level as a performer. Lisa appears to have understood this before LLOUD was announced. The company was not assembled after launch. The structure was designed before the public ever heard the name. Start with music distribution. LLOUD secured a global distribution deal with RCA Records, part of the Sony Music Entertainment ecosystem. This single arrangement is worth understanding carefully, because the distinction between a distribution deal and a traditional recording deal is the difference between renting a house and owning one. Under a traditional label recording deal, the label owns the master recordings, the actual audio files that generate royalties every time a song is played, licensed, or sold. The artist receives a royalty on those earnings, typically somewhere between 15% and 25%, after recouping recording costs. The label keeps the rest, permanently, because it owns the asset. Under the distribution arrangement LLOUD has structured with RCA, Lisa retains ownership of her master recordings. Sony's infrastructure, its marketing relationships, playlist influence, radio promotion networks, and international market penetration, moves the product. LLOUD keeps the underlying asset. The label works as a service provider. The artist keeps the catalog. The commercial validation came almost immediately. Rockstar, released under LLOUD in 2024, debuted at #1 on multiple global charts. It was not just a hit record, it was proof of concept. Proof that Lisa could launch music entirely through her own infrastructure, without YG Entertainment's promotional machinery, and reach the same commercial altitude, in many metrics a higher one, than anything she had released during her BLACKPINK years. The follow-up collaboration with Rosalia, New Woman, layered artistic credibility over commercial scale and demonstrated that LLOUD's reach extends well beyond the K-pop demographic. But music is only the beginning. And here is what most people watching the streaming numbers have missed entirely: the part where the real structural money flows. We are barely halfway through the LLOUD story. Because what she is building behind the music, the infrastructure that most people watching the charts will never see, is the part that could make everything else look like a warm-up act. Brand partnerships represent the second major revenue pillar of the LLOUD model, and this is where the financial architecture becomes genuinely sophisticated. Lisa was already one of the most commercially valuable brand ambassadors on the planet before LLOUD existed. Partnerships with Bulgari, Celine, MAC Cosmetics, and others generated substantial individual fees. These were transactional, fee paid, campaign delivered, contract closed. Under LLOUD's structural framework, brand partnerships can be engineered very differently. Equity arrangements instead of flat fees. Licensing deals that generate royalties across product lines for years. Long-term creative collaborations with compounding returns rather than single-cycle payouts. Critically, LLOUD can negotiate these arrangements as a company, a legal and commercial entity with its own leverage position, its own team of negotiators, and its own agenda, rather than as an individual artist with a manager seeking the best deal available this quarter. Artist development and management is where LLOUD's long-term strategic power will likely prove most consequential. The company is positioned, and has signaled intent, to scout, develop, and manage a roster of artists operating under Lisa's label umbrella. This is the architecture that transformed Jay-Z from an extraordinarily successful rapper into one of the most powerful business figures in global entertainment. You stop being an artist who happens to own a company. You become a company that happens to have an artist as its most globally recognized ambassador. The artist's career amplifies the enterprise. The enterprise outlasts any single career. Global touring and live entertainment remains the most economically reliable revenue source in the modern recorded music landscape. A song's streaming revenue is measured in fractions of a cent per play. A sold-out arena generates millions per night. LLOUD's control over Lisa's touring rights, production budgets, venue selection, ticket pricing structure, merchandise revenue architecture represents a pipeline of enormous value. The distinction that matters here: most artists, even successful ones, work through third-party promoters who extract significant percentages from every show's gross. A company with in-house touring capability keeps those points internal. Every dollar flows back through LLOUD's books. Digital content and media forms the fourth major pillar. In 2024 and beyond, some of the most valuable entertainment assets are not physical venues or physical product. They are attention economies. Sustained, monetizable global attention at the scale Lisa commands is an asset that media companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars trying to build. LLOUD's ability to deploy that attention directly, through managed YouTube content, branded digital production, social platform strategy, and potential streaming platform licensing deals, represents a vertical that has barely been activated. And then there is the team. The full composition of LLOUD's internal structure has not been made entirely public. What is known, and what signals can be read from the company's moves and partnerships, indicates an assembly of professionals with backgrounds in international entertainment law, brand architecture, music publishing, digital media, and global market strategy. This is not a team assembled to manage a pop star's calendar and protect a public image. This is a team assembled to build a holding company with genuine cross-industry reach. Every hire is a signal. Every structural decision is a signal. And every signal from LLOUD is pointing in the same direction. Part 4. The cultural and industry impact. Step back from the business mechanics for a moment and consider the larger picture. Because LLOUD is not only a company story, it is a culture story. And in some meaningful ways, it is an industry-reshaping story that will be studied in music business programs for a generation. Kpop has spent the last 15 years achieving a global cultural penetration that no one inside the Western music industry expected. BTS put Korean music on the Billboard Hot 100 in ways that ended every argument about whether it could be done. BLACKPINK sold out stadiums on every inhabited continent. The global market for Kpop, music, merchandise, touring revenue, brand deals, content, is now measured in the tens of billions of dollars annually. It is, by any quantitative measure, one of the most successful cultural exports in modern history. But here is the structural irony that nobody inside YG Entertainment, HYBE, or SM Entertainment is eager to discuss publicly. The global expansion of Kpop has always been executed through a model that concentrates economic power at the label level. The labels own the master recordings. The labels control image rights. The labels hold the majority of the commercial revenue generated by their artists' careers. The artists, even the most globally famous ones, have historically received a fraction of the value they create. Lisa was generating hundreds of millions of dollars in commercial value for YG Entertainment over the course of her BLACKPINK career. She left. She built LLOUD, and now she is the label. The implications for the broader K-pop industry are significant enough that Korean entertainment analysts have spent considerable time examining what they are beginning to call the LLOUD effect. If Lisa can demonstrate convincingly, commercially, not just symbolically, that an artist can exit a top-tier K-pop label at peak fame and not only sustain her career, but build a more structurally powerful one, it validates a path that every next-generation idol watching from inside a training program will have to seriously consider. The power negotiation between K-pop artists and their labels will not be the same after this. The leverage calculation has changed. And this is the part that the traditional music industry, in Seoul, in Los Angeles, in London, is genuinely concerned about. Because it is not only about one artist, it is about what happens when that blueprint gets copied at scale. Western music industry veterans, executives, senior managers, and financial analysts who have spent careers inside the major labels have begun privately acknowledging what LLOUD represents: a template. Not the first artist-owned label in history, obviously, but perhaps the first from the K-pop world with the global commercial scale, the brand infrastructure, the financial architecture, and the strategic sophistication required to make it work sustainably across multiple markets simultaneously, including Western markets the major labels have historically treated as their exclusive territory. The The traditional defense the majors deploy against artist-owned labels has always been resources. The argument is not without logic. Major labels provide marketing infrastructure, risk capital, distribution networks, and industry relationships that no individual artist can replicate alone. A brilliant record without a distribution network is a file on a hard drive. A great artist without a promotional apparatus plays to empty rooms. LLOUD's structural answer to this argument is its RCA distribution partnership. By engaging Sony's infrastructure specifically as a service provider for distribution, market access, and promotional reach, while retaining the underlying master ownership and company control, LLOUD has found a mechanism to use the major label machine's capabilities without surrendering to its authority. It is a fundamentally different power relationship, and it worked at commercial scale immediately, as Rockstar demonstrated. But the impact of LLOUD extends well beyond the internal politics of the music industry. And this is the moment in the story, the part that deserves to be said plainly, without qualification, where the significance becomes something larger than a business case study. For the next generation of Asian artists, Thai, Vietnamese, Indonesian, Filipino, Malaysian, across all of Southeast Asia, watching Lisa build a globally scaled entertainment empire. From a position that begins in Thailand and extends to every major commercial market on Earth, the message being transmitted is something that cannot be captured in a revenue figure. The message is, this is possible. It was not supposed to be possible. The Western entertainment industry has been structurally organized for most of its history in a way that made this kind of power accessible primarily to artists from English-speaking markets, or to those willing to fully subordinate their cultural identity to Western commercial preferences. Lisa has not done that. LLOUD is not a Thai company performing Americanness. It is a genuinely global company built by a Thai woman on her own terms, operating at the highest level of the industry she chose. That is the impact that outlasts any chart position, any quarterly earnings report, or any headline. Part 5. What comes next? Here is where the story moves into genuinely speculative territory, in the most productive sense. Because LLOUD, by any honest measure, is still in its early operational phase. The infrastructure is in place. The proof of concept has been delivered commercially. The cultural momentum is real and compounding. The question is not whether LLOUD will grow. The architecture is clearly designed for growth. The question is how far the trajectory extends, and on what timeline. Artist signings and roster expansion will likely be the most visible near-term development. LLOUD building a genuine artist roster, multiple acts across genres and global markets, with Lisa functioning as both the label's most famous face and its CEO, would transform the company from a sophisticated artist vehicle into an independent entertainment powerhouse with multi-artist revenue diversification. The precedent is well established. Roc Nation launched on Jay-Z's name and expanded to represent dozens of artists across music, sports, and entertainment. Quality Control Music started with a small cluster of Atlanta acts and became the defining label of an entire era of American popular music. LLOUD's distinctive advantage is global brand recognition from its first day of operation, something no other independent label in the K-pop or broader Asian music space has ever launched with. Strategic investment or acquisition represents the next logical escalation of LLOUD's capitalization trajectory. Entertainment companies at this stage of development, with demonstrable revenue, substantial global brand equity, and a CEO whose name alone generates nine-figure commercial interest, are precisely the profile that private equity firms, venture capital funds, and strategic corporate investors are structured to target. The most significant reference point is the relationship between LVMH and Rihanna's Fenty portfolio, a strategic investment that provided the capital infrastructure to scale internationally while preserving the creative autonomy that made the brand valuable in the first place. A similar arrangement with LLOUD as the investment vehicle, from a luxury conglomerate, a technology platform, or a global media company seeking cultural capital, would accelerate the company's timeline considerably. IPO speculation is the most ambitious projection on this timeline, but it is not an unreasonable one on a 5 to 10-year horizon. A publicly traded LLOUD, with diversified, auditable revenue streams across music publishing, brand partnerships, artist management, live entertainment, and digital content, would represent a genuinely novel investment category for public markets. K-pop agencies are already publicly traded. HYBE's market capitalization runs into the billions of dollars. A publicly traded LLOUD, with Lisa's global brand equity as its core asset and a Western market revenue base built into its structure from inception, would offer something that HYBE and its Korean competitors fundamentally cannot: a company built inside the Western commercial infrastructure, not simply selling into it. Most people will still be streaming the next single when LLOUD begins those conversations. They will be surprised by what has been built while they were watching the music videos. They should not be. Lisa's strategic positioning over the next 5 years will be defined largely by one question the company will have to answer explicitly. Does she remain LLOUD's most prominent performing artist indefinitely, or does she begin a gradual transition toward functioning primarily as an executive whose name amplifies the enterprise rather than one who anchors every release cycle? The most consequential artist entrepreneurs in history, Jay-Z, Dr. Dre, the architects of modern entertainment holding companies, eventually shifted their primary energy from performance to enterprise. Their performing careers became amplifiers for their business portfolios, not the center of gravity those portfolios orbited. Lisa is 28 years old. She has more active performing years ahead of her than many executives have in their entire careers. But the structural ambition embedded in LLOUD's design suggests that she is already thinking substantially beyond the next album cycle. The machine being built is not sized for one artist's career. It is sized for an industry position. At full scale, a decade from now, perhaps considerably less if the current momentum compounds, the LLOUD empire looks something like this: an independent entertainment holding company with a global artist roster, a luxury brand partnership division generating 9-figure annual revenue, a touring and live entertainment operation that competes directly with the majors, a digital media and content production arm with premium distribution across every significant platform, and a CEO whose name is spoken in the same professional conversations as the architects of the modern music business. Not as a pop star who built a company, as an entrepreneur who happened to also be one of the greatest performers of her generation. Go back to the beginning of this story for a moment. A 13-year-old girl from Thailand boards a flight alone to Seoul. She does not speak the language of the country she is flying to. She walks into an audition room with approximately 4,000 other people. She walks out with a training contract. Years of construction follow. An idol is built. A group is launched. Records fall. Stadiums fill. A global industry takes note. And then, at the precise moment when most people expected her to either remain inside the system that made her famous or move to the next available platform within it, she did neither. She became the system. CEO, CFO, director, LLOUD. 3 titles, 1 clear-eyed vision. An industry watching very carefully, and in some quarters, watching with something that resembles concern. What Lisa has built with LLOUD is not simply a story for K-pop fans or for people who follow the music industry's internal mechanics. It is a case study in what happens when a person with extraordinary global reach and an extraordinary capacity for patience and strategic thinking decides that the economic value she generates should flow back to herself, and then constructs the legal, financial, and operational infrastructure to make certain that it does. The music industry has always been excellent at keeping artists successful enough to remain compliant, and not quite successful enough to become genuine competition. LLOUD is Lisa's answer to that arrangement. And it is, by design, a very loud answer. Here is the question worth sitting with, and the one worth putting in the comments below. If Lisa succeeds in building LLOUD into a fully scaled independent entertainment empire, and right now, every structural indicator suggests she will, which artist is next? Who is sitting in a management meeting at a label that owns their masters and takes the majority of their earnings watching this unfold and quietly doing the math? Because the era of the passive artist is ending, and LLOUD just wrote its first chapter. If this story belongs in your feed, subscribe. There is more of this coming. Drop your prediction in the comments. Who builds the next LLOUD? And when you are ready, the next video is waiting. The full breakdown of how the K-pop business model is fracturing in real time and what comes next for the industry it built. The empire is building. And now you know exactly how.